Welcome to our August edition of our cybersecurity awareness training program. Just a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions throughout the presentation here, you can just enter them in chat. Your mic is muted currently, so if you enter them into chat, I will try to catch them as we go through the presentation here. If not, I can grab them at the end in the Q&A section here. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm Brian. I'm the CTO here at PCA Technology Group. I'm also a certified ethical hacker. Really, all that means is pretty much just all the stuff we talk about throughout the presentation here. I have the capability of physically doing. You have to know how to do it in order to protect clients from it. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. So let's go ahead and move on here. So this, why are we worried about cybersecurity? Well, it's not getting any better. Let's just put it that way. There's always some kind of an event, or some kind of breach, some kind of hack, some kind of ransomware. Every time you turn on the news, there's something happening in the realms of cybersecurity, whether it's China hacking the government, our government, or military, or Russia, or whatever. There's always something going on here. So, if you just got to be aware of some of the things that are out there, as well as some of the tactics that the bad guys are using. And it's also a lot of times it's required for compliancy things like HIPAA, PCI, if you fall under that, DFS, depending on your company and your business model. So you can see here, there's a lot of logos on this screen right now that these are all fairly large companies that have either just been breached this previous month or have been breached since the beginning of the year. So you can see there's really big names on there. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And, that's why we have these monthly to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on. So the one thing to keep in mind is that on average, hackers are in your system, could be in your system. If they get into your system, they could be in there up to about 7 months prior to being detected. So it's not like they get in and they kind of, send a message to you saying, haha, I got you. That's not always the case. A lot of times, first of all, that you're not usually physically being targeted. So what happens is they figure out who took the bait. One of the tactics that they use, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But they're trying to figure out who it is that they have, what company it is, what data they have access to. Is there anything valuable in there? And then they kind of let you know after the fact, deciding on what they're going to do. Sometimes they steal your data and threaten to post it on the dark web unless you pay them X amount of money, which is extortion, or sometimes they actually encrypt your data where you can't use it unless you pay them X amount of money. That's ransomware. And sometimes they do both. So it's just one of those things that, you have to be aware of. And usually 60% of the businesses that have a major attack do go out of business within 6 months. So just keep that in mind too. So who's responsible? A lot of people think that it's the ownership or the IT company or whatever in a company. The truth is everyone's responsible. These presentations are really catered towards end users because that's what the bad guys actually target. They don't necessarily target the technology; they target the end users. And if they can get that end user and manipulate that end user into letting them in one way, shape, or form, they pretty much bypassed all the technology that's in place in front of that. So they don't have to break through the technology because they're getting somebody on the inside to inadvertently let them in. So this whole presentation is catered around that. And we like to call that the human firewall because literally the end user is the last line of defense in the event that, a bad guy's trying to get in there. So that's what they do here. So what is it? It's social engineering. So social engineering is exactly what it sounds like. It's manipulating human tendencies and natural behaviors to try to get an end user or a person to do what the bad guy wants them to do. If they want you to click on something, they can send you to a website that has 10 million pop-ups that might be adult oriented and embarrassing. And while you're trying to close these out on your work machine, they pop something up there that they wanted you to click and you inadvertently click it because you're panicking. It's super simple to do, unfortunately. A lot of times it's done via email and things like that, but we'll go over all the tactics here and kind of explain what the priorities are here. Most common attacks are email and phishing. So I would say 90 to 95% of the social engineering attempts are done via email. So we're going to spend a lot of time focused on that. Social media can also be used for reconnaissance, so they can use that for information once they get a someone on the end of the hook per se. They'll figure out, like I said, they'll figure out the company, and they can do that through social media. They might be able to manipulate people with fake friends and things like that, and maybe able to pivot or leverage some type of social media platform. Trends, obviously, we talked a little bit about the extortion piece, ransomware. Now there's actually AI to this too. There's while the artificial intelligence like ChatGPT, OpenAI, things like that can be useful to the general public. The bad guys actually figured out how to either create branches of those technologies and use them for bad things, unfortunately. So now the AI is doing some of this stuff. So it might be manipulating the emails, it might be writing the emails, it might be harvesting information about potential targets and leveraging that and using stuff like that. So it's a scary world out there, unfortunately. Who's behind it? Criminal groups. Sometimes it is third nation states and things of that nature. Very rarely is it a malicious insider, but you do have to be aware that sometimes it could be someone actually inside the company. There's been a few instances in the past that the bad guys have tried to convince somebody on the inside that, hey, you let me in, we'll give you X amount of the money that we get paid for letting us in the door. Unfortunately, you got to keep in mind that one, that's not very smart because it is a federal offense and it is a felony as well. And two, in the two most recent cases that has actually happened, the person was caught very, very quickly. It happened at Verizon and it also happened at Amazon. And the person that actually did that, two people that did that, got caught very, very quickly. So it was one of those things where just got to be aware that potential is there. Most of the attack vectors, as I mentioned, are done via the internet, and very rarely are they physically on site. So when it comes to attacks, like I said, usually you're not physically being targeted, so it's rare that a physical on site is happening. So how do we protect ourselves from this? So the biggest thing is that we try to manipulate our day-to-day, or cater our day-to-day behaviors to try to stay away from potential attack vectors. So one of them is web surfing, and it does kind of tie into email too, but we'll get to that. So if you are doing any type of web surfing from your work machine, highly recommend keeping that limited to business use only. It does lower your potential attack vectors a little bit. And what I mean by that is, if you only need your computer to access your ERP cloud program or something, don't be going to your favorite shopping store or whatever, and going and trying to buy stuff or whatever during work hours on your work PC, because you could end up on a malicious site, and if you mistakenly click on something there, it could potentially infect your work computer, which in retrospect would be allowing somebody in from the outside inadvertently. If you don't use social media for business purposes, stay off of that while you're at work, at least on your work PC. As I mentioned, there's a lot of things on social media, and it's not just Facebook and Instagram and all those type of things. It's also on LinkedIn and things like that too. So if you don't necessarily use that for any type of business purposes, highly suggest you stay off of those type of platforms if at all possible. The other thing too is keep your browsers updated. So what I mean by that is any browser that you're using, like your Edge, your Chrome, your Firefoxes, if you're a Mac user, could be Safari. Make sure that you're keeping those browsers up to date. There's updates happening all the time for browsers, and if you're not careful, if you do happen to come across a malicious site that is looking for an exploit in one of those browsers, just by visiting that site, they could potentially leverage that security issue. So by keeping your browsers up to date, that will hopefully at least protect you or isolate you as much as possible. And most of the browsers nowadays, when you open them up, it has a notification that, hey, there's an update ready. Or if you are already in the browser, sometimes it'll pop an exclamation mark or a red mark in the corner saying, hey, update that. If you do happen to see that, obviously apply that as soon as you can, just to alleviate any potential risk by not running an updated browser. And the other last thing here is be suspicious of pop-ups and download links. Most of the new browsers nowadays do have pop-up blockers built into them, so this isn't quite as much of a problem as it used to be. However, they can still leverage some technologies that will allow you to do this. If you ever find yourself, obviously the normal behavior when a pop-up comes up, it usually will have a close button down at the bottom, or a close X usually in one of the corners. And that's the normal behavior to get rid of those. You're going to click on one of those two areas. Well, if I'm setting up a malicious site as a bad guy, I know you're going to click on one of those two areas. So what I'll do is I'll send a pop underneath that window, so you don't see what's behind that window. You're only seeing the top one. And when you click on one of those two areas, it's not only closing that window out, but it's also clicking on that window behind it simultaneously, and it could be downloading something without you even realizing it. So it's just something to be aware of, and this doesn't happen all the time. I'm not saying every pop-up is malicious, but again, if you keep your surfing limited to business use, then your risk of this potential attack is limited. But if you are going to sites that aren't business oriented, you do have the potential of maybe falling victim to one of these malicious pop-ups. So if you do find yourself in that situation and the pop-up blocker in the browser doesn't stop it or keep it from popping up, or you're just worried about clicking on it because it doesn't look right, what you can do is you can hit Control W on your keyboard. It works on Macs, it works on Windows, and that should close down the window of focus, which is normally that pop-up window. If that doesn't work, you can hit Alt F4. And that will close down your entire browser. So you will lose every other window that you have open if you have any other ones, but it'll at least keep you from having to click on one of those two areas. For mobile phones, if you're doing surfing on mobile phones, I really can't give you a good idea. We get that question a lot because all the phones are different and the different versions, the different OSs. There's no common way to really tell you clearly how to do that. If you find that if you're surfing on your phone and you run into that situation, the only thing you can do is maybe end the program task when your phone. However, that is done based on, if it's an Android or a Windows phone or an Apple device. So this is another tactic. This kind of leverages a few different things. So this is leveraging laziness for end users. And it's also leveraging some manipulation. So what this does is basically people don't like remembering passwords. They don't like having multiple passwords for different sites. They don't need to remember all this. I just tired of it. I just don't want to do this, and that's fine. So what this does, this is leveraging something called single sign-on, or SSO. So what is that? That's basically allowing you to potentially log in to another site that allows this to happen, and use one of your existing logins. So it's usually like your Microsoft account, your Facebook account, Apple, Google, Discord, Steam, things of that nature is usually tied to this type of single sign-on thing. And what it does, let's say in this case here on the screen, we're going and visiting Canva. That's the website we're going to visit. And instead of me setting up a different separate account using my email, which is the way I would recommend. However, if you choose not to do that, then you can potentially leverage, in this case, it looks like Apple, it looks like Google, it looks like Facebook. So you can utilize one of those three login potentials to sign up and access Canva and it will hook in and authenticate you using one of those other methods. So the issue is that the bad guys have set up fake versions of these type of logins in the effect to try to steal your credentials. It's extremely easy to fall for and very, very difficult to detect. So I'm going to show you some examples here. So on the right-hand side here is a real version of this. So this is in fact trying to leverage your Facebook login. So this is a real version of that. It's, you know, any site you go to that is leveraging the single sign-on, and you decide you want to use your Facebook account to log into that instead. It's going to ask you for your username, which is usually your email, your phone number, your password, and you're going to log in. And it's going to allow you to access that site using your Facebook credentials. Now, on the left-hand side is a malicious version of this. And if you look at these, minus the fact that one says phishing and one says real, the screens look exactly identical. If you're a tech-savvy person, you're going to go up to the URL or the website link on each of these. You can compare that to the fake one, the real one to the fake one. They match exactly the same. And if you're a real tech-savvy person, well, I'm just going to check the padlock. Well, wait a minute, the padlocks are on both of them. And if you click on the padlock, look for the security certificate that goes along with this site, it's going to be the exact same on both the real and the fake one. So these are exactly the same. There's no visual way for you to tell whether it's a real one or whether it's a fake one. I'm going to show you another example here. This is an example of using Google, same concept. Now this one, the only visual thing that you can tell the difference is the real one obviously is the one on the right again, but the fake one does have create an account at the bottom here. However, that really wouldn't raise any red flags in for me. If this were to pop up on my screen, it's just a visual thing. It just might be a versioning issue or something that would not raise any flags for me. And again, if you look at the URL up here, it's going to match exactly on the real one compared to the fake one. And the link, if you click on the padlock, again, it's going to be one of those things where it's exactly the same on the phishing site. So again, visually, there's no way you're going to be able to tell the difference between the real one and the fake one if you come across one of these that are out in the wild that is malicious. So how can you tell? There's one easy way. If you, first of all, as I mentioned, you know, if you, instead of using one of your other accounts, I highly recommend you just create a separate account for it using your email. That's one way, that's the best way to avoid this whole thing. However, if you do want to leverage that single sign-on, if you ever come across a site that is trying to leverage this type of technology and it's asking for, you know, whatever, if you're trying to use your Apple ID, your Facebook, your Google, what I want you to do is I want you to go to the top of the bar of that window that's going to pop up. So this whole window is going to pop up on you and that screen saying you need to sign in with your Google account and that stuff. What I want you to do is to go to the top. I want you to right click or left click the bar, the top bar of this, and try to drag this window outside of the browser window. So if it lets you actually drag this out to the desktop, that is actually the real site. So if you try that with the fake one, what's going to happen, you're going to try to drag that out of the browser and it's going to hit the border of the browser and it's not going to let you drag it out. It's going to stop. So you won't be able to drag the fake one out to the desktop where the real one you could. So that's the only way you're really going to be able to tell whether it's the real version or whether it's the fake version. And it's really because of how they're displaying this on the screen. It doesn't allow it to break out of the browser window where the real one does. So that's the only way you can really tell right now on how to do that. So just be aware of that. So with the browsing, we're going to end up going into email tips. They kind of are related, and we'll get into that. But same concept, you know, don't use your email for anything besides work-related. Excuse me, work-related emails. Again, don't use it for personal use. Don't sign up for your book clubs, your coupons. Don't use it for your Amazon shopping, your eBay shopping. Just don't do that. The reason why is because a lot of the tactics that the bad guys use are sending fake purchase notices, fake shipping notices, fake invoices, and things of that nature. And if you don't do that with your work email, as soon as you see something like that, that's invoice from Amazon, you don't even have to open it. Visually, you can tell, you know what, I don't do anything in that. All I got to do is delete it. It's a very quick way of just visually being able to detect that kind of thing. And it makes it so much nicer if you like I said, you don't do that stuff on your work email. You keep them completely separate. That way, if you do happen to get a shipping notice from UPS, well, I don't use anything my work email for UPS. Who the heck is going to be shipping something to me? You don't even have to open it. You just delete it. It's that simple. So you're completely avoiding the potential trap that the bad guy is trying to get you to fall for. On the flip side, if you do follow these rules, make sure that if you have a personal email, that you're not accessing that email while you're connected or using your work PC. Because it's kind of the same thing as if you do happen to open up one of those emails in your personal email, you're opening it up on work resources or probably on your work machine. And what's going to happen is going to be the same thing as if you were using your work email, because you're opening that up on your work machine. So if you want to access your personal email, what I would say is do it on your cell phone, but make sure you're on the data plan and not the shared wireless of the corporate network. And then you're completely isolating your phone from the company work resources, and it avoids that potential problem. This is another thing that I recommend, and it used to be called the preview pane. Now it's called the reading pane. And what this does is basically on the screen here, you can see that it kind of shows you the contents of the email here on the right-hand side of the highlighted email here at the top of the top of your inbox. So as the messages come in, this is, the top message is actually going to display over here automatically the minute it comes into your inbox. Now, the problem with that is that this is an automated piece of software that is physically opening all of your email as they come in to your inbox. That is not what you want. You want to be the one interacting with your email, because if this is a malicious email, this feature is opening that email automatically for you, where instead you can't visually say, oh, well, you know what, I don't even want to open that. This has already done it for you. So you definitely want to turn that off. And how to do that, if you go to the View tab here, if you're using Outlook, go to View tab here, and then you'll see it says Reading Pane, which is highlighted here. If you hit that little arrow on the side there, it'll drop down. It'll say bottom right or right bottom off, I believe. Just select off there, and then now this column will actually go away. And now for you to open up the emails, you'll have to double click them, which is exactly what you want to do. You want to be the one opening your email, not some automated piece of software in your email client. So as we mentioned, phishing emails are probably 90 to 95% of the social engineering attacks out there. This is an example of one. So what it is, it looks like it's coming from a trustworthy entity or a known entity. And in this case, it looks like it's coming from Microsoft Outlook, and it's saying, hey, your password's expiring, and in order for you to log in or to keep this from happening, I want you to click on, this link here to change your password. And if one link isn't good enough, I'm going to send you a second link to do the same thing. So they're conveniently sending two different links here in the emails, in hopes that obviously you click on one of these two links. This is not really coming from Microsoft. This is not a real email. And what they're trying to do is manipulate you into clicking on one of those two links. What happens if you click on those links, I'll show you here in a few slides. But the idea and my recommendation is, if you get one of these emails out of the blue, ever, what I want you to do, unless it's something that you're expecting, never ever click on any embedded links in any emails that you get, unless it's something that you're expecting. The reason why is because, and we'll show you here in the 2 slides, that it's a fake site that's set up to basically steal your credentials. And I'll show you how that's done here in a minute. But the safest way to do that is, if you get one of these emails, and if you even have the slightest inclination that this is real, what I want you to do, instead of clicking on these links, if you are a Microsoft user, what I want you to do is open up a brand new browser. You open up a brand new browser yourself. I want you to go to the Microsoft site, and I want you to log in on that site that you just typed in and went to on your own. That way, you know for a fact you're getting to the real site, and not some fake site that just happens to look at it. And I'll explain that here in a moment. Here's another one, same concept. This is coming from a bank. Again, it's trying to convince you that someone's trying to withdraw money in another country, and it wants you to verify or allow that to happen. And here's another handy link that we're going to send in there. So again, if you are an actual customer of Trusted Bank and you have an account with them, do not click on that link. What I want you to do is open up a brand new browser. I want you to go to trustedbank.com by you typing it into that new browser yourself, then log in. That way, again, you know for a fact you're on the right site and not some potential fake site that this might be sending you to. So I'm going to show you exactly how they do it. So basically, got the bad guy up here in the left-hand corner. He's going to send an email out to a potential target. Again, you're probably not physically being targeted. He's probably sending these emails out in an automated fashion to thousands and hundreds and thousands of emails addresses, just hoping someone clicks on them. So what happens? Well, the potential victim ends up getting that email, and guess what? They don't follow Brian's recommendation. They just happen to click on one of those links. So what happens? It's going to send them to a fake site that looks like the real site. And when you put your credentials in there, instead of it allowing you to log in, you're going to get some kind of an error message. And it's going to send whatever you entered in on that fake website right to the bad guys. So while it looks like your credentials didn't work, it's because one, it's not the real site. It did send that information to the bad guy. So this fake site thing, there's a couple different ways the bad guys do it. So it used to be the fact that it would just keep erroring out, because obviously this is not the real site. But each and every time that you're entering your password in there, it is entering and sending that to the bad guy. The more recent versions of this and the smarter bad guys, what they do is they let you enter it into the bad site once, and then what they will do is they will redirect you to the real site in hopes that you don't realize that they did that. And then when you log into the real site, you're just going to think you mistyped your password on the fake one and not even think anything of it. In the meantime, you did give the bad guy your password, and now they can actually get into the real site using that information. So again, the easiest way to avoid this is to completely don't click on any embedded links unless it's something that you are expecting. What do I mean by that? Sometimes when you do reset your password or you sign up for a new account or something like that, it will send you an email saying verify, that this was you, or confirm that this is valid. That kind of thing I'm okay with because it's something that you just generated. However, if you're getting that out of the blue, and it's not something you generated, please just open up a brand new website and go to that whatever site that is claiming it's coming from. Go to that site yourself, and if you have an account there, log in with that. It avoids this whole potential pitfall here. So the first thing was phishing. This is spear phishing. So what is spear phishing? Spear phishing is a little more tactical, I would say. So this might be a little more targeted, where the bad guy might have be targeting someone. Usually it's HR, and pretending to be someone on the inside. So there was a little bit of homework done on this one. It's not quite as broad as the first version, where they might just be blanketing, 100,000 email addresses. This one here, okay, they got a list. They probably got it off of Facebook, or they got it off of your website. It might be an employee list or call list or something. So they're going to pretend to be somebody, one of the employees. Are going to reach out to your payroll or your HR department and say, hey, I want, this is in this case, it's Shannon. I'm reaching out and want you to change my direct deposit information, and I want it done ASAP. Here's the new info. If you're a company and you don't have the proper procedures and policies in place to protect yourself from this potential type of attack, what's going to happen is you're going to send this information, you're going to follow this email, and you're going to send you're going to change that direct deposit information. Payroll is going to come, and you're going to send that to basically what is a drop account set up by the bad guys using stolen identity. And the minute that money hits that account, it's going to be cleared out and emptied. And then you're going to be out that money. And then the employee is going to realize, hey, wait a minute, I didn't get paid. And now they're going to come back to you and say, well, what? I didn't get paid. What's going on here? Like, oh, well, you told us to change your direct deposit. No, I didn't. And now you've got to reimburse the employee because you made a mistake and didn't really verify that it was actually that employee making the request. So how do you avoid that? The easiest way is again, any type of financial transaction, just don't blindly follow via email. You have to verify either in writing or in person, have that person come in and sign paperwork, or some method. I know there's a lot of companies now that have moved to a remote workforce, so that may not be physically feasible, but you may be able to contact them at a known number as well too, like a cell phone number that is known, not previous to the conversation on the email. That way you can verify via voice that, hey, it is this person making that request, and you're at least checking the check boxes to make sure that you're verifying that this is really who it is that they're claiming to be. So it's definitely a tactic that is used heavily. So just be aware of that. And then whaling is going after the big fish or pretending to be the big fish. A lot of times this is someone trying to be or pretending to be a C-level person, and usually targeting somebody that is underneath them or a subordinate usually. Excuse me. In this case, it's someone trying to be or pretending to be the CFO. They are targeting somebody that I would assume in this case works in the finance department or financial department or something. And they're asking them, hey, are you busy? I'm out of the office and I need you to process me a wire transfer. Again, if you blindly follow this, what's going to happen is you're going to end up wiring money to some drop account that you're never going to get back because it's probably not the CFO making this request. So again, if you get, sometimes it's this, a wire transfer, sometimes it's gift cards, things of that nature. So that's another tactic that the bad guys use. If you just blindly follow this request and don't verify that it truly is Roger making this request, you could fall victim to this very, very easily and very, very quickly. So again, any type of financial transactions, anything to do with money, do not just blindly follow an email request. Always verify whether it's a phone call at a known number, whether it's in person, walk over to that person's office, have them come to you, or in writing, some method to verify, secondary method besides this email to ensure that you're actually talking to the right person that you think you're talking to. That's the best way to avoid that. So another thing that we recommend, if you're a Microsoft 365 client, or you're a client of ours and you're using that product, we enable this by default. And what this is it basically that gives, this is a banner that we activate. There's no charge for it. It's just a setting that you turn on. And what this does is this tells you that when you see this banner on top of your emails, this is saying that, hey, just be heads up that this email is coming from the outside. So it's not somebody in your organization, it's coming outside of the organization. And just be aware of that. Now, why is this important? Well, there's a couple of reasons why. In this case, you actually have to open the email. Now, you can also set this up where it actually will prepend external in front of this test email here. So you'll see that it's coming from the outside too, just by looking at the email. You'll see it in the subject line. It'll say external, and then it'll give you the topic of the subject of the email. Some of our clients do have that enabled too, but most of them just don't like to do that for some reason. But in this case, you actually have to open the email to see this this actual yellow banner here. But why is it important either way? Well, first of all, this if you have this activated, and you get one of these emails from Sean, or you get one of these emails from someone that's pretending to be Shannon, it would have that banner on it, and immediately that should raise a red flag for you. Wait a minute, this is supposedly somebody I work with, but it's saying it's coming from the outside. Something doesn't make sense. You're right, something doesn't make sense because it's not really the person sending that email. It's somebody from the outside pretending to be that person. So that is a quick visual way of telling, breaking through some of these other tactics that the bad guys are using just by enabling that, because it would have that on it. Now, again, if you're just using this banner, you do have to open the email, but it's very prominent. If you put it, it will be right at the top of the email, so you'll see that. I actually like the one where it prepends on the subject line too, because now I don't even have to open the email. I can just see it. Now, keep in mind, every email coming from the outside is going to have that, but that is a good indicator that at least you know that is coming from the outside. So if it does seem like it's coming from somebody inside and you do open it, you're going to see that it's actually not coming. And again, it's raising that kind of, wait, something's not right here. So that's the whole concept behind it. So the bad guys realize that some people are getting smarter, end users are getting smarter, and there's companies like us and folks like me that try to make end users aware of some of the tactics that the bad guys are using. So they come up with new methods to try to trick the end users and get them to manipulate them. So this is another one. This is called consent phishing. So what is this? This is you potentially could be on a website and somewhere along the line, it's going to pop up a little window that's going to have this permissions requested error or permissions requested information box. So if you're not real tech savvy, you don't really know what this is, you might just say, oh, I don't know what this is, whatever. It says Microsoft and it looks legit. Okay, let's just hit accept here. If you do that, what you're basically doing, if you actually do look at this and see what it says, you're basically giving whoever created this app, and in this case, this is a malicious app that is designed to basically get into your Microsoft account. You're basically giving them full-blown access to everything in your Microsoft ecosystem. That means your mail, your files, your contacts, your calendars, your OneNote, your SharePoint, your Teams, everything. You're giving them full-blown access into all of that. And this also bypasses multi-factor too. So, and we'll talk about what that is. But so if you blindly just hit accept on that, you are going to get yourself in a world of hurt if this is a malicious version. Now, there are instances where these apps are valid. A lot of times it has to do with third-party integrations and things like that. What we recommend and what I recommend is that if you're a client of ours of PCA, you ever get one of these messages pop up on your screen, what I want you to do is call our service desk. We can quickly remote into your PC. It'll take us a few seconds. We can quickly look at it for you just to verify, yeah, it's legit, or no, it's not legit, and give you that answer. If you're not a client of ours, obviously reach out to your IT team or something. Just make sure you involve somebody else. And that goes for questionable emails too. If you get an email that you're not sure whether it's legit or not, instead of clicking on things or opening attachments or it looks suspicious, again, just call our service desk. We're here, 7 to 5. We always have live people here, and it's something that we can quickly verify. And if the desk can't do it, it'll eventually get escalated to me, and then I'll take a look at it real quick and open it in a safe way, perhaps, if I need to. But it's always better safe than sorry. My advice is, obviously, if you have a gut feel that something just doesn't look right, you're probably right. Go with that gut, because more likely than not, you're correct. But this is just, again, be aware that the bad guys are trying to manipulate folks with this app permission too. And then finally, now we're on to touchless items. This became a big thing because of COVID. A lot of people have been using these QR codes. Some restaurants use them, but what they're doing is they're sending codes out to people. And what you do is you scan it with your phone, and then it sends you to a potential website using that code. The problem with it is you really don't know where you're going until you get to the destination, because even when you scan that code, a lot of times it's a shortened URL, so you really can't see where it's going anyways until you get to the actual destination of that site. So if it is malicious, you've already taken the bait at that point, just by going and visiting with that QR code. And this is super easy to get people to fall for. A few years back, I think it was 2 years ago, if you were watching the Super Bowl, one of the vendors had a commercial, and all it was one of these QR codes bouncing around on a blank screen. I think it was a white screen with a black code, and it had no writing, no nothing. It was just like 30 to 45 seconds of black screen with this code bouncing around like Pong, for anybody that's been around in those days, on the screen. and they had like over 1 million people scan that code, not even knowing what it was during the Super Bowl. It was absolutely ridiculous. Great marketing genius, because in that case it was completely harmless, but it just goes to show you how easy it is to get people to just scan these things. If I am targeting somebody and I know you go to a restaurant, I could easily drop a malicious code on a table, and I guarantee you it would take a very, very long time, even for the people that work there, to realize that that code isn't a menu, or even it doesn't even belong there, because they're short staffed. There's a lot of shortages in help, and just people aren't paying attention. So it's real easy to manipulate people with these codes. So just be very, very careful and make sure that whatever source this is coming from is valid and applicable. So that leads me on to USB and mobile devices. Basically, USB devices are like the little flash keys that used to be really popular. They're not as much anymore, but I know sometimes people use them. If you ever happen to find one of those laying around on the ground and you don't know who the owner is, don't plug that into your machine. If you're a client of ours, wait till one of our engineers come on site, give it to them. They can bring it back to our shop. We can kind of make sure it's safe and try to figure out who the owner is, and then bring it back to you, or clean it if it isn't safe and bring it back to you. Because just by plugging that into your machine, it could potentially load some software onto your machine without you even realizing it, by just plugging it in, and could allow a bad actor to come in later on down the road without your knowledge. If you do happen to use these to transfer, I know some architectural firms sometimes use these because of CAD drawing sizes and whatnot. If you do use these, just make sure you're doing virus scans. If you are using these at both ends, whether it's coming off of someone's machine and into yours, or coming from your machine into somebody else's, make sure you're doing virus scans at both sides, to make sure there isn't something potentially hitchhiking its way onto that key, and when you plug it in, it now infects you. The other thing too, this is a pretty big tactic now too. This actually just happened. This is happening frequently at military bases. Just never blindly accept or use electronics that are sent in the mail that you didn't order. And it's super easy to do. You can send somebody a smartwatch. You can send them an Alexa wireless access point. You can send them an iPad. If I'm trying to breach a facility, all you got to do is send them a free device that is infected with something. And the minute they turn it on and connect it to the network, I basically have access to that network through that device. So this is another, it's worth a couple $100 that they're losing by sending that device, if they can actually breach the company with it. And this just recently happened at a military base, where they were sending them smartwatches, and of course the soldiers accepted them and wore them and connected them to the wireless of the base, and they had access to the base networks and stuff. It was a crazy thing, and they realized that they were infected with some software and malware that was tracking things and trying to steal data, and it was kind of crazy. But just be aware of that. Don't just blindly accept gifts in the mail that are coming without you physically ordering them. Everybody has a smartphone now too. Most everybody has a smartphone now. They're battery hogs usually, and they need charged a lot. What I don't want you to do is, most of the time they're USB cables that you can charge these with. Don't take that cable and plug it into your laptop or your desktop to charge. Don't use your computer to charge your phone. While it will do that, what you may not realize is it also turns your phone into a USB device. So if there's something malicious on your phone that you weren't aware of, by plugging it into your laptop or desktop, you could potentially infect whatever you plugged it into with whatever may be on your phone inadvertently that you didn't know about. What I want you to do is use your wall plug, the part that goes into the actual electrical outlet. Use that to charge your phone or your car, your cigarette lighter or whatever. That way you're not using a computer device to potentially charge this. If you're out and about, the other thing too is that be aware that, and this, I've been talking about this for a while, and now it seems like the government wants to talk about it too, because it's become a big problem, is public charging stations. Again, that's the charging stations that might be out in public places like airports, sometimes hotel lobbies, coffee shops, malls, things of that nature. they have these stations set up that if you need a quick charge on your thing, because again, these are battery hogs, you could simply use that, plug in, and boom, you're good to go. Well, unfortunately, the bad guys are setting up malicious versions of these. And as I mentioned, when you plug this in, it also turns this into a USB device. So what's happening is if it's a malicious public charging station, yes, it's charging your phone, but it's also stealing everything off of your phone via that USB connection that's happening. It's stealing it could be stealing your contacts, your phone records, your text messages, all your files, all your photos. It could be pulling all that stuff off of your phone. So again, I would be careful and not recommend using public charging stations. Wait till you get to your car, or wait till you get to a place where you can use the wall brick to charge your phones. So that leads me on to passwords. Right now, at this point in time, our password recommendation is a minimum character length of 11. I'll explain why here in a bit. It used to be 9 back at the end of last year, and then it jumped up to 11. I'm going to say it's probably going to jump up to 13 or 14 here shortly, and I'll explain why that is. Along with that minimum characters, we also recommend one special character, at least one uppercase letter, as well as at least one number. So it has to be at least 11 characters. It has to contain a special character. That would be like an @ sign, a pound sign, $sign, exclamation, things like that. And also at least one uppercase and at least one number. So when we get to this point, everyone's like, okay, first of all, I hate remembering passwords. And now you're telling me that I have to remember a complex password and it has to be unique for every site that I go to. How do you expect me to remember this? And how am I supposed to keep track of all these passwords? Well, there's a couple different ways to do it. There are online managers. And basically what that is, it's a place where your passwords are stored. It's on the internet. And it will keep track of the sites that it's used for. Sometimes it'll pre-populate it when you get to that site, or you need to enter that password. It'll recognize the site and pre-populate that for you. So it does make it somewhat easy. I do not use those. I'm not a fan of those at all. Reason being is because the bad guys also know that's where all the passwords are. So of course they're huge targets, and if they get access to those, they get a lot of potential victims. With that in mind, if you remember back at the beginning of the presentation with some of those company logos of companies that had been breached, one of those online managers were breached this year. And that wasn't the first time. That was, in fact, the 4th time they've been breached. And I would highly recommend, at this point, if you are a LastPass user, I would not use that service. There are a couple other ones out there that you could use in its place, but I would highly recommend staying away from LastPass at this point. That's just my personal opinion. If you want to stick with them, you can, but they've been breached now 4 times. And the last time they actually got a lot of information that is very detrimental to the storage and security of any passwords that are stored with that service. So they're pretty much completely compromised at this point with what was stolen the last time around. So that's just, not saying don't use online managers. I just personally don't do it. What do? I actually store them in a different way. I actually store my passwords in a simple text file. It is on a encrypted USB key. So in order for me to access that USB key, I have to remember one password. I know what that password is, and that will unlock that USB key to allow me to access what is on that text file that is on there, on that thing that contains all my other passwords. Now, I also, in that text file, I am not writing down my entire password in that file. So in that actual text file, there could be missing characters that I know are missing in certain positions. It could be at the beginning, it could be at the end, it could be multiples at the beginning, multiples at the end, or wherever. I know what that pattern is. I know what's missing. If someone were to ever get access to that file, or even steal that file somehow or another, they would go through that, and none of those passwords would work because they're not the true passwords in their entirety. So that's one way to do it. You could do it with missing password or missing characters at certain levels. And you can see in the example here, this is just kind of password spelled with some complexity things, dollar signs and numbers, and just the P, the A, and the D are missing here. So maybe that's the case that there's two in the beginning and one at the end of every password that you have to pre-populate when you enter them in. But again, someone physically seeing that would never know that. The other thing you could use is extra characters, so you can add extra characters to your passwords. In this case, same concept. The password is actually in the middle here. So in this case, I'm adding two at the end and 2 at the beginning. Now, if you are adding characters and you're doing it in some sort of written manner, whether it's electronically or physically, you need to make sure that you randomize whatever characters you're adding. Doesn't matter what they are because you're not using them anyways. But if I did AB, on every single password and ZT on every single password, there's software out there that will actually recognize that might be padding or might be additional characters, and it will tell you to not use that. And then I've got your password because I'm going to peel those off. Now, if you randomize it, I would never know what that is, as long as, in this case, you could see there's 2 different versions of it, but this is just used for simplicity. As long as you're using unique passwords across the board, no one would ever know what's padding and what isn't, unless you're using the same characters. So that's another way you could potentially record your passwords. Obviously store those securely. Don't tape them to your monitor, even if they are padded or anything. But it's just one of those things, a way to potentially store passwords. So back into 2022, why do we recommend 11 characters now? So you can see here, back in 2022, at the end of the year, to brute force a password, and I think we were using 10 characters, not 9. I think I misspoke there. It basically would take basically 5 months to brute force a 10-digit password that was numbers, uppercase, lowercase, letters, and symbols, which is exactly what we tell everybody that they need to use. So that was at the end of 2022, and you can see with 11 characters, it would be about 34 years, and that's brute forcing is basically going through every possible combination, starting from 10 character password. It's A, then A, B, A, C, and just going through every possible character combination that's on your keyboard to get to the end of that. It would take 5 months with current hardware, computer hardware, to get through 10 character passwords. Take 5 months to get through every combination, and 34 years at the end of 2022. Now, if we jump to 2023, now that 10 character password is being guessed in 2 weeks. And that 11 character password is now being guessed not 34 years, but 3 years. They dropped 31 years in less than 7 months, because the hardware is getting so fast that this program can go through those potential random variations of what is possible in such a fast period of time that they can guess these passwords so quickly. And it's a cat and mouse game. Like I said, we're probably going to be up into the 12 and 13 characters. I mean, you can see it takes, right now, it's 226 years with a 12 character and 15,000 years for a 13 character. I guarantee you, by the end of this year, that 226 is going to be in the 100 range, guaranteed it. And I don't, I'm not sure, probably cut in half on the 15K. So it's a constant cat and mouse game when it comes to the password thing. But that's why we recommend such high character passwords. We did talk a little bit, I mentioned briefly about multi-factor. So what is multi-factor? Multi-factor is a concept of something you have and something you know. So something you have or something you know is your password, your login, and your password. So what happens if you're using multi-factor? This is a way of potentially stopping hackers from gaining access to your account. I know I have on the screen here, it's about 90%. It's probably a little less than that now, but it's still better than nothing. Nothing's 100% foolproof, and I'll explain a little bit why. So what it does, you log in with your username and password, and if you're using multi-factor, what will happen is it'll ask you for a code, and you get that code. Either it'll come to your phone and say, hey, are you trying to log in? And you hit yes, or it'll be a code that's generated on your phone, and you type that code in when you go to enter that site. So without that phone, a bad guy cannot get access to your account. So they may have your password and they may have your login, but without this piece, they're not going to be able to get in easily. They know that. So what happens here is now they're coming up with something that's called MFA fatigue. Now, two things to keep in mind here. This works with the push method, which is where it's going to come to your phone and say, hey, is this you logging in? And what they're going to do is they're going to bomb you with all kinds of requests, much like that pop-up windows that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. They're going to hit you with multiple, hey, is this you? 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 And you're finally going to say, oh, gosh darn it, I'm sick of this. Yes. And you let them in. This is only going to work if your credentials are compromised. So they know your username, they know your password. If you're getting those type of requests on your phone bombarded, please don't hit accept. What you need to do is whatever site that's coming from. If it's Microsoft, you need to go to your Microsoft account immediately and change your password because your credentials are compromised. That's the only way this will work. Excuse me. And again, it's trying to manipulate you to the point where it's going to frustrate you. And you're sleeping. They do it at night. They do it during meetings. It could be text messages, whatever. And you just finally hit yes, and now you've let them in. So that's the only thing that's stopping them from getting access to your account. So if that happens, change your credentials, and then that problem will go away. So wrapping up here, obviously some general high overview tips. Don't click on links and emails. Make sure you verify who the person is physically that you're supposedly communicating with. Use strong passwords and MFA, and also secure them passwords securely. If you have any employees that leave, whether voluntary or involuntarily, make sure that those accounts are being disabled. And obviously, the last one here is make sure that your data is backed up regularly. In the event you do get hit by a potential cyber attack, one of those backups could be your saving grace from having to pay a lengthy and costly amount of money to try to get access to your data back. So hopefully this was eye-opening for you. Again, it's a scary world out there, unfortunately, and it's not getting any better. It's only going to get worse. I do update this presentation often because tactics change often. So we do have these monthly, and you're welcome to join us at any time. From another standpoint, we do have a YouTube channel as well that I speak to some other tips and tricks. I address public wireless that I don't talk about in this presentation. I also address some social media stuff, which is not only good from a business side, but also from a parenting side. If you're a parent, you might want to listen to that. It's like a 10-15 minute thing, just to kind of give you little tips and tricks on what to try to avoid on social media or some other things too. So I thank you for your time today. I don't see any questions. If you do have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat there. Otherwise, again, these are the links here. If you do have any questions after the presentation, you can feel free to send them to info@pcatg.com. All right. I thank you for your time, and you enjoy the rest of your day, and stay safe out there. Thank you very much.